Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
As always, guys, thanks for being part of the family and checking in. If you haven't seen this before, you can link to the other channels. Like over here, we have Evolutionary. You could link to EEARTS right there. And then right here is Heart's Home. It's right here in this corner, so everything is quick and easy, and you could bop about and check out the different things that are going on. Check this out as you are looking at a quake coming into Russia. This is on the Kamchatka Peninsula.
Wow.
That cat was a blur. Oh, man, but I don't blame him because, it's going to cause panic when everything shakes like that.
I know, that was like, that's some amazing ninja kitty there.
I mean, that cat moves so fast, right?
Yeah.
And this was a 6.5 on, again, the Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia. And we had a 7.0. Some were calling it as high as 7.3, Papua New Guinea. Have not seen any major damage from this. So that is good. It again, is an area that gets hit all the time with quakes. All the time. We have another train derailment. 25 cars in Montana. Yeah, this happened yesterday, as you can see. I mean, doesn't it seem like often we see them dipping at the edge of a river? Huh. Well, this particular one, Montana Rail Link, owns the railroad, is aware of the situation. The company that owns the train is yet to be identified. This is, again, an event that occurred yesterday. No reported injuries. This one comes less than a week after a 70-car train derailment hauling hazardous materials in North Dakota. In that incident, Canadian Pacific train derailed at 11:15 p.m., roughly a mile southeast of Windermere in Richland County. No injuries were reported over there. Officials say 31 of 70 cars derailed, some carrying hazardous materials. Crews identified a leak of liquid asphalt. No fires were caused by the derailment. Cleanup will last about 7 to 10 days. Lots of train derailments. Now, obviously, these are obviously not just coincidences. And, I just want to go back, just look at our history. When World War II was well underway, any sort of public-private boat vessel that was out there was a target. So if there was a boat that was coming out of Norway or the UK, Great Britain, and a German U-boat happened to see it, and even though that boat, you don't know what it was, they wouldn't know exactly perhaps what it was carrying, they would shoot it down. Typically they would sink it. And many vehicles of transport, whether it's trains, planes, ships, again, they just are casualties at a time of war. And this is exactly what we have going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's very unfortunate, and we're seeing things recap themselves. We're seeing that spiral, that thing do it again.
And the other thing that can be an act of war is literally the weather, as we watch this. That was an EF3 tornado going by, and this is in Little Rock. You saw their whole shed just get picked up and lifted off. There's numerous videos showing there was like 50 tornadoes the other day. 50. It's just crazy the damage a tornado can do. It just totally complete and catastrophic. It'll wipe out anything in its path if it's a big enough one. And again, they're still coming to the realization, this is Covington, Tennessee, of just what a horrible outbreak it was as the CIA, FBI, and everybody else starts to listen in to the video to check for their approval. They should be busy checking out the execs at Google.
Indeed.
Absolutely. So please do send your prayers to everybody that has been in the path of all these weather disaster events. The U.S. leads the world in weather catastrophes. Yeah, the Earth has a punching bag, and its name is the United States. Interesting, is it not? Blame geography. Oh, okay. Blame geography. Well, in the old days, used to blame God. God's mad at us. That's why he did this. Blame geography for the U.S. getting hit by stronger, costlier, more varied, and frequent extreme weather than anywhere on the planet, several experts say. 2 oceans, the Gulf of Mexico, Rocky Mountains, jutting peninsulas like Florida, clashing storm fronts, and jet stream combine to naturally brew the nastiest of weather. That's only part of it. Nature dealt the United States a bad hand. But people have made it much worse than that, and here's how we build, several experts at the Associated Press said. And then they add in climate change. Buckle up, more, again. The U.S. is by far the king of tornadoes and other severe storms. And so they give us, their reasoning again. We could look at a lot of different places and you don't see the same things. It depends on when, too. It really depends on when. Lately, it seems like the U.S. is a punching bag. Absolutely. But there again, there is a bigger purpose. Remember, we had 2 eclipses. X marks the spot.
Definitely. X marks the spot. And we're going to finish and complete that X marking the spot. But I don't know about you guys, but for the last 3, maybe even 4 days, I've had this horrible headache. It's been manageable, but it's not a normal headache. And as a child growing up, my father was a walking barometer. So whenever we had a storm coming in, he would tell us, because he would have a headache or he would feel the atmospheric pressure. He's a very sensitive person. And boy, oh boy, I'm that way too. I get very sensitive, and it's almost like that headache that I was having was very unnatural. And it was, the weather god tapping on our area and doing things that, it might look like it's natural, but it's not natural.
No, and all you got to do, first off, we have X marks the spot, the 2 eclipses, not quite 7 years apart. Again, the first one was August 21st, 2017, and the second one, April 8th, 2024, which is rapidly approaching. That's just a little bit over 1 year away. Oh, man. And, boy, that makes me, really think, because the whole time I've been knowing what's going to happen. By the time we get done with 2024, again, the U.S. it's different. Pluto return, right? We had the Pluto return. All this goes together. This is an X marks the spot again, right over the New Madrid. That's right where it crosses the country, right over the New Madrid. This over here is Cascadia. Right down here, this goes over basically Charleston. There's a big fault in Charleston. Obviously, in 1700, they say there was a 9.0 that caused massive damage. It swept whole Indian villages away, completely away. And then down here in Mexico, we will see big quakes through this area to the west of Mexico City. And then we have up here, this is St. Lawrence River area. And it is possible to get some interesting quakes up through this area as well. Some of the Earth change maps show this widening a lot. And then, of course, Casey was saying that this is going to become a much wetter area, and the Great Lakes empty into the Gulf. But, again, he was predicting those things like for 40 years ago. So timelines, oh yeah, nothing is set in stone. Nothing is set in stone. Absolutely. But what we do have is all these declassified documents from Freedom of Information Acts and looking at patents, and there's so many patents that talk about being able to control the weather. China openly admits they can control the weather. You can go through and here's Geoengineering Watch. Everything that you see. I mean, there's so many patents going back to actually, I've seen a patent since the oldest one I saw was in the 18s. It was like 1895 or so. But, April 27th, 1920, process and apparatus for production of intense artificial clouds, fogs, and mists. Yeah, making clouds from moving aircraft, 1927. 1927. Yeah, atomizing attachment in 1932 for airplane engine exhausts. But there's no such thing as chemtrails, no.
No, there's not, because Wikipedia says so.
Yeah, it is just, well, what about the airplane spray equipment, 1934? It goes on and on. Aerial discharge device. No, chemtrails are a fallacy. That's just an urban legend. They think we're just idiots, and we're not. We know what they're doing. They are doing. Absolutely. And I do think they've also infiltrated so much of the community that we are in, and there's a lot of channels that are dedicated to exposing the bigger natural cycles. And yeah, there are bigger natural cycles. But again, everything we see could be explained away with technology.
It could, thinking back and looking at some of the ancient writings and, where it says God sent a thunderous blah, blah, blah over the land. And God was angry, so he sent hail the size of, basketballs. It's not, these are not natural, and it is not God, the creator of all, did not send these things. It's a entity that understands and manipulates the world that we live in. If you take a bunch of, and I love this analogy, you take 100 black ants and 100 red ants, and they will get along peacefully. And if you put them in a jar and you shake that jar, they're both going to blame each other for all the chaos and all the angst and all the disruption and all the disturbances. But it wasn't even them. They're just going at each other because they don't know any better. And unfortunately, we as humans, we're kind of in that position.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting, too, when you look at this is the Wizard of Oz. Mm-hmm. The head, this is actually what one branch of the GG kind of looked like. That's I never realized it either. This is exactly the shape of the head of one branch of what we would call a GG. That truly are the wizards behind the curtain. This is this is your god that's sending the storms. It's basically an individual that has technology. And it's a collective group of individuals that just have technology that, again, silly humans didn't pick up on. The almighty terrible wrath of the Lord is upon us. Not really. But, they are not really nice beings. That's for damn sure. Everything that we see, and there's so much analogy with, the Wizard of Oz that it really demands its own video in and of itself. So all that we see, again, why would we see this particular ABC News article talking about why the U.S. leads the world in weather catastrophes? Well, it's because we have both the Atlantic and the Pacific. Yeah, no, it's because we're target. Again, X marks the spot. And, Babylon the Great, again, they've given it to us in prophecy. And here we have a long dormant lake that has reappeared in California, bringing havoc along with it. Months of atmospheric river storms have pummeled the area, which is home to crucial farmland. Historic snowpack in the mountains above the basin will make things worse. Yeah, there's still a lot of snow that hasn't melted yet. And it's appearing here, and this is exactly what we've talked about, 61. Sacramento was in San Francisco. The flooding was just insane. 1861 to 1862, and it looks like we may be replaying it again. And at times, the whole Central Valley has just flooded massively. Again, we had bought an acre of land over here in Death Valley, and we found sponges and clams and coral and a giant tooth. Yes, a giant tooth. Yeah. All in here. This was well underwater, and I would venture to say within 300-400 years. It felt like it was most definitely not millions of years ago.
And not to mention, Mike has a very keen sense of smelling the beach, and he would always say how the wind, it had that scent of the ocean water still.
Absolutely. And we have the deadly landslide that claimed 20 lives. This is in the Republic of Congo. We've seen landslides all over the world, South America, Africa, everywhere you look, landslide. This is in India. Caused major traffic issues as well. Army vehicles damaged, falling stones. This is the danger of being on too much of a slope. And when I was in North Carolina, I was basically on the side of a mountain, and I remember having coffee one morning and hearing a landslide on the backside of the mountain. So, always be aware of your surroundings. The one thing that all this is doing is this is, again, ruining harvest. The wheat harvest is being threatened in India. Is it any surprise? All this consolidates power. McDonald's reportedly temporarily shuts its U.S. offices, prepares layoff notices. Now, this just felt weird. And that's why I wanted to bring this up, because, we would never eat at McDonald's. Haven't eaten at McDonald's in over a decade or more, probably closer to 2. Not new. There's all sorts of stuff in there. You have no idea what's in there. But this feels weird. This feels weird, and there's a big switch over. There's a big shift getting ready for the new executive leadership that's going to be taking over. Let's just put it that way.
I know, and I've seen some really, really clever T-shirts that say "Eat fast, die young," and that is no joke. I mean, you eat this stuff, it is going to put your body in a state of rot. It really will, and that stuff is just so horrible. And if you're getting it for your kids, please stop. If you're eating it for yourself, please stop. It's really bad for you. It's just, I didn't know in the times that I did eat, I got really sick, and I just never put it together, because I thought, well, why would they put food out there for the masses that would make everybody sick? It just, I was back asleep, and it didn't make sense to me. So yeah, it's not very healthy.
So archaeologists have found lost underwater civilization with magnetic fields. Magnetic data, like seismic data, is collected by looking to extract energy sources from the seafloor in order to map out the landscape for construction. And this is talking about Doggerland. Doggerland's interesting. It really, really is. When we go back, again, everything was completely changed when we had the Younger Dryas event. Basically, 12,000 years ago, right? 11,700, something along those lines. Massive event led to catastrophic flooding. It led to great increase in the ocean height. I mean, not what they're talking about with climate change and stuff, but, literally 400 feet. And when we think about it, again, if we just look at the U.S., 2/3 of the population is within 100 miles of the coastline. 2/3 of the population. You flood out that 100 miles of coastline, there's 2/3 less people if it happened all of a sudden. And with the Younger Dryas event, it was just nightmarish and catastrophic. Barbara Handclough wrote a good book called Catastrophes many years back, and she said that our human psyche, and literally it's even in our DNA and our genes, the trauma that hasn't been processed yet from this cataclysm is still with us, and many times we're just like an abused person, a prisoner of war, so to speak, that's gone through horrible, traumatic torture with events like this that come from the sky. And I've shared with you guys too. It's interesting because I've sensed similar energies down along the southern part of New Mexico and Arizona. We've sensed giants. We've sensed, a destruction that happened, and even giant bodies and things like that. When we were coming in, crossing the country, rolling along, first past El Paso. I didn't feel around El Paso. It was more like when you're in New Mexico and you're going towards and into, especially into southern Arizona, right there by the border area down south, that you could feel this and see some unusual rock outcroppings and sense that, there was a massive extinction. But what I felt up below Winslow, Arizona, and then there's this massive crater that's caused, they say, by, again, an asteroid, massive asteroid. That just was, I just could feel it so much. It was making me almost nauseous. And I don't think it was a natural asteroid coming in. I think this was a war. And it just wiped out everybody. I could just see and sense everybody immediately looking up at the sky, and then they're gone. just looking up, boom, gone. No longer living in this density.
Mm-mm. No, and that's so horrible that we have this deeply recorded in our DNA. And look to animals as examples. You can have a pet that is born and maybe raised by really good humans who never abused it. Yet if you raise your hand and that pet flinches, it's remembering DNA because maybe the mom was abused. So it just stays, and you have these automatic reactions to things. So it is very, very valid, and that has been done to us, and it's really not very nice at all.
Yeah, this is that crater and you could go and you could pay, you could see it. So you could go and pay so much money, and again, we've been here, and you could look down into the rim, and I forget what it is. It was pretty expensive, like $25 a person or something. But what we're getting, I mean, I do believe that Cindy agreed. This was not just a random rock that came in. No, that this was part of a battle. This was part of a war. And again, this is the area. There's Winslow. It just nasty what happened here. And by the way, Flagstaff, I think, is one of the most beautiful areas in our country. The area around Flagstaff's gorgeous. Love it, love it, love it. Just a little bit expensive. But the area I was talking about was coming in from Las Cruces and heading towards Tucson. Like in here, you could feel, again, giant energies and, unfortunately, massive cataclysms that were ongoing. But what we see with this Doggerland, again, this is a stretch of land that once connected mainland Europe with the eastern coast of Great Britain. National Geographic, which obviously, we understand how mainstream that is, explains that approximately 12,000 years ago, what is now ocean was a series of sloping hills, marshlands, wooded valleys, and swamps. The university has a team dedicated to studying Doggerland, and their project is entitled Europe's Lost Frontiers. Both Lost Frontiers data and National Geographic agree humans once settled this based on tools and artifacts. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this area was packed with people, relatively speaking, and it's just fascinating to see what's happened. These are, as you can see here, Dogger Bank. And then we look at what they were thinking. The tsunami, there was a tsunami somewhere around, they say, 5500 BC, there's been a massive, massive cataclysm, and then another cataclysm. Again, and some people have equated it to, we'll have two. If we go through the cycle, the precession of the equinoxes, around 25,000, 26,000 years, we'll have two time periods. Think of it in quarters, but two of them are a little bit larger than the other two, but still all of them very, very large. So it does correspond. Again, quarters, we have 4 yugas. It does, but of course we go 4 and then we go up and we come down, and then again, we're coming into frequency-wise certain very, very dark, malevolent energies, ability to manipulate things at certain times. So what you see is, that when we go back to about 12,000, 13,000 years ago, all this was part of the mainland. All this was part of the mainland. And you had the ice pack as well. So people could most definitely get around. You could literally walk from Berlin to Amsterdam and London, and even cross over into Ireland. It wasn't a separate island at that time. And then, of course, we have the Hindu stories that also talk about submerged major cities in a blink of an eye. And also, what's missing in the Abrahamic tradition is the wars of the gods. All you have is this reference to giants, and there were giants in those days, and they had offspring with the fallen angels and everything. Well, look to the Hindu books, and they talk all about extraterrestrial, interdimensional warfare going on of massive proportion with massive, incredible technology. And so do the indigenous people everywhere else. So, again, that's the big reveal. Meteorites expected after intensely bright fireball sighted over Toledo, Spain. This is going to make you maybe rethink all these quote-unquote meteors, asteroids. So here you see there was a fireball brighter than the full moon observed over Toledo, Spain on April 2nd. And they say that there was an asteroid that broke up and some pieces did make it down and actually impacted. So I'll give you guys the links. Again, the guides have said that there is going to be several, it looks like 3 objects that can impact us at some point in time. And we've shared in the past some interesting video, and I don't know if I could ever find it again. It was several years ago, where you could see an object moving close approaching like Jupiter, and then all of a sudden it gets kind of bumped on a different trajectory. When we think about tractor beams, we think about technology. Oh yeah, we are definitely protected out there from planet killers, things like that. But then you'll also have those people that say, why don't the benevolent beings just take care of us and we can all just relax? That's not the purpose of coming into incarnation. That's like, that to me, that speaks to somebody that wants cheat codes for every game. Okay, I tried 5 minutes. I give up. Give me the cheat codes. That's what, we're here to learn and to grow and to explore and to uncover things. We got to do the work. And actually, many, what you would call extraterrestrials, are incarnated in human bodies right now, doing the work from the inside.
Mm-hmm. I know, and many times, and it's a valid concern when we're working with people. They think back and they have a very difficult time feeling, knowing, and understanding that they chose this type of thing. They chose these things to happen in their life for the purpose of expansion. And, you look at the things that go on and you're just kind of like, no way. How could I have possibly chosen this on purpose? But the fact is we did, and we chose it for expansion of our soul, and we get to glean all of that for ourselves. And if other beings were to step down and do things for us, then we have no longer gleaned it. It is no longer ours. It is theirs. And just like loving parents our guides, our angels, our ancestors, they're not going to take that expansion away from us. No way. If you are dealing with an entity that is telling you what's going to happen in the future, unless it's like life or death, and it's not your time to go, and then say maybe an angel can come in and tell you to do something to keep you safe, that's the only exception to that rule. That's the only one. So please pay attention to that and know that your guides and angels are there to do just that. Guide you, not do it for you.
Absolutely. It's up to us to overcome. Medieval Swahilis and Persians paired up 1,000 years ago in East Africa, ancient DNA reveals. So about a millennium ago, long before the age of internet dating. Yeah, no internet dating for these guys. Nah. Swahili women in Eastern Africa paired up with a new type of suitor, men from Persia. Now, again, this is the middle of Africa on the Indian Ocean. What are they doing dating Persian men? This sounds really weird, doesn't it? Researchers made the finding by studying the ancient DNA of 80 aristocrats buried in 6 medieval and early modern towns along the Swahili coast. They wrote in a new study published March 29th in the journal Nature. These international hookups occurred just as Islam was spreading to the Swahili region. The study supports historical evidence that Swahili aristocrats are the descendants of Persians who married Africans centuries ago. The picture is almost a perfect match to the Kilwa Chronicle, the oldest narrative told by Swahili people themselves, and as almost all earlier scholars had dismissed it as a kind of fairy tale. So our results do not provide simple validation for the narratives previously advanced in archaeological, historical, or political circles. Instead, they contradict and complicate all of them. The Swahili civilization has existed for thousands of years along the coast of East Africa, where they play a key role in the trade routes connecting Africa, Arabia, Persia, India, Southeast Asia, and China. Swahili people embraced Islam a little bit more than 1,000 years ago, fell under colonialist control in the 1500s, did not regain their independence until the mid-20th century. The Swahili people were then largely absorbed into modern Somalia, Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique, and Madagascar. The question of where they came from originally and how their unique culture evolved has been subject to debate among academics for at least a century. Not all these debates were carried out in good faith. Western archaeologists in the mid-20th century emphasized the connections of medieval Swahili to Persia and Arabia, sometimes suggesting that their impressive achievements could not have been attained by Africans. So wrote this person. The new study shows that the story of the Swahili is neither straightforward nor far off from the civilization's own legends. Upon examining the DNA of the medieval Swahili elite, some of whom lived about 800 years ago, the scientists discovered the majority of the male ancestors came from Asia, particularly Persia, or modern-day Iran, while the majority of the female ancestors came from Africa. These findings bring out the African contributions and indeed the Africanness of the Swahili without marginalizing the Persian and Indian connection. Further, the Persians do not have appeared to have forced their ideologies upon their African partners. Oral traditions and archaeological evidence suggests the descendants of these Asian African unions spoke an African language, and that African women retained significant economic social power. The researchers suspect that the traditional matriarchal society of the Swahilis was by then so entrenched that even the traditionally patriarchal Persian men followed the local customs so they could marry into the powerful African families. So interesting, is it not? And that in some ways reminds me of the parallel with, the missing links that we have, and then also the legends of the giants coming down and extraterrestrial males mating with Earth females.
Mm-hmm. Right, to create their own offspring, and in so many cases be able to overshadow that, not always for evil, sometimes for good, but we have to realize eventually it's not just us. We are not the pinnacle of modern civilization. I mean, that is so far crazy. And I was just kind of flipping through my own little newsletters this morning, and I saw where there was actually a lighthouse that's made of solid rock out in the ocean. I mean, it's like way off it's solid rock. You're not going to tell me that a group of humans took their chisels and hammers and made an entire lighthouse out of that. There is no way. And if you look at a lot of the other stone structures around the world, that took some really amazing tools to make those things. So once humans are able to break out of that, crack out of the eggshell, realize we are not alone, then you can start exploring about who you really are. And that's the fun stuff. That's the meat of everything. That's what life is about, I think.
Absolutely. Indigenous people of the American West used sacred horses half a century earlier than previous thought. Indigenous oral histories, archaeological evidence are rewriting the stories of how horses came to the American West. And again, with the last article we were looking at, it was all revision from what science was saying about with the Swahili. So again, it's just the fact that everything we get from science is constantly being rewritten. And look at the double rainbow there. This is in Switzerland, Bern, Switzerland. Nature is so beautiful, and at the same time you might view this as not beautiful. These are bats. Look at all those bats leaving the cave there. Have you ever seen that in person? Oof. I wonder, have you ever heard that in person?
Oh no, that's scary. I would worry about so much bat poop going on.
A lot of guano there.
Lots.
Yeah, there's more guano there, or is there more guano at a political rally?
I like it.
As we see, we have a traffic wolf on the lookout. Make sure that the rest of the pack crosses just fine. Social animals, absolutely. Absolutely. As we shared with you guys, we were surprised because we saw at 2 or 3, and they looked a lot like this guy. And, again, Rama was really close to them. And Rama was a good boy because when I yelled, he came right back, even though he was like 100 feet away from me and maybe 25 feet away from these guys. He wanted to go following them, but he was a good boy.
He was a great boy. And please keep in mind when you see these magnificent creatures in your life, in your realm, that says something. So definitely, if you get to see that with your own 2 eyes, know it's a sign. It's very special, and think into that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because again, like right when that happened, then we could feel that we're being monitored to a higher degree than before. We can feel the eyes upon us, and we had done a video that Elon Musk had tweeted that he was just tweeting that, hey, he is not, this is Elon Musk saying he is not going to commit, the S word, SUICIDE. And then we get a message from YT, saying, are you okay? Because the video was flagged. Again, we were talking about Elon. Yeah, we have no consideration of doing that. And, again, this is how the system works. Yeah, the system is corrupt. The system is dark. Don't be part of the darkness. Stay out of it. Rise above it. We have to utilize this technology, to communicate with others, and that's why we, are incarnated in the first place. Is all about helping guide people in these times. So, when that particular job is done, we will disappear into the mountains, and we'll just live solitary, peaceful lives, and that's, all we have intended. We definitely will not allow ourselves to be pulled into their drama because, again, it's all about lowering frequency. And if we didn't have to use the technology, we wouldn't even use the technology. But again, this is how we communicate in these times. So we have to still keep doing our job and awakening others wherever we possibly can.
Absolutely. It's all about scooping up those who want to be a part of this, those who want a spiritual practice, or who understand that there's something more, but they're not sure what. And we're here to just sort of guide people on that road. And when you get on your path, off you go. And that's just wonderful. And that's what we're here to do. And we love it. And without you guys, there's no us. And we just really want to help guide you and get you there. Mike and I have both been on some pretty difficult paths and going through the realizations of awakening and getting on our mission. You know, it can get very confusing when you're going through an awakening, and we do like to help people walk through that, help coach people through that. I mean, what we do is we go by our own experience, and we've talked to many other people, so we have some ideas on helping people along. Once you realize that this world out in front of you is a 3D matrix that's just constructed to keep you in line, you realize, I don't like this. I don't want this. I want to know what this life is all about. And that would be a good video to do something about, you know, the first Saturn return, the second Saturn return, because this is when you really start to question things. And you start to question, you know, what is your plan here on this earth? And it's a very important time for our soul.
Absolutely. So thanks for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. Couldn't do it without you guys. Much love. Share these videos far and wide. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.